You have never had to make fire. Not really. You have struck a match, clicked a lighter, turned a stove knob. But you have never sat in the dark, cold, and hungry, knowing that if you couldn't produce a flame in the next hour, you might not survive the night. For most of human history, that was the situation, every single night. And the ability to change it, to pull fire out of nothing using only your hands and whatever the ground offered you, was the most important skill any human being could possess. It was so important that we spent hundreds of thousands of years figuring out how to do it reliably. And the story of how we got there changes everything you think you know about who we are and how we became this way. Let's start with what we know for certain, because the evidence is older than most people expect. In 2012, a team of archaeologists led by Francesco Berna at Simon Fraser University published a landmark study in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. They had been excavating Wonderwerk Cave in the northern Cape province of South Africa, one of the longest continuously occupied sites in the archaeological record. And deep inside the cave, in layers of sediment dating to roughly 1 million years ago, they found something extraordinary. Burned bone fragments, burned plant ash, evidence of fire produced and used by early humans 1 million years before the present. The species responsible was almost certainly Homo erectus, our evolutionary ancestor, a creature with a brain roughly 2/3 the size of yours, who walked upright, made stone tools, and apparently had figured out something fundamental about flame. But here is the question that finding immediately raises. Were they making fire or were they using it? That distinction matters enormously, and it is one that took scientists decades to untangle. There is a difference between fire use and fire making. Wildfires are common in Africa. Lightning strikes dry savanna grass and the plains burn. Any animal can stumble across a natural fire. A few species, notably the black kite hawk in Australia, have even been observed deliberately carrying burning sticks to spread fire and flush prey. Encountering fire is not the same as creating it. To take a burning branch from a wildfire and carry it back to your cave, feeding it carefully, keeping it alive through rain and wind and cold, requires intelligence and planning. But it does not require understanding how fire is born. For a very long time, our ancestors may have been entirely dependent on nature to provide the spark. They could maintain fire. They could use it. They just could not start it from nothing. And that dependency was terrifying in ways we can barely imagine. Think about what it means to rely on a flame you cannot replace. If your fire goes out in winter, you are cold. Your food is raw. Your camp is dark. The predators that fire keeps away, the leopards and hyenas and wolves that will not cross into the light, suddenly have access to you again. A community that cannot make fire is a community that is always one bad storm, one moment of carelessness, away from catastrophe. Anthropologists studying modern groups who maintained fire-carrying traditions into the recent past have documented the extraordinary lengths people went to in order to keep their fires alive. Designated firekeepers. Elaborate protocols for protecting embers during travel. Fires carried inside hollow animal horns to protect them from wind and rain. The psychological weight of that responsibility, of knowing the survival of your group depended on a flame you were carrying in your hands, is almost impossible to overstate. Which is exactly why the invention of fire making was so revolutionary. The oldest convincing evidence for deliberate fire production, the ability to create fire from scratch rather than simply maintain it, comes from multiple sites dating to between 400,000 and 700,000 years ago. At Kesem Cave in Israel, researchers found evidence consistent with repeated, controlled fire use at a fixed hearth, suggesting a level of fire management that implies the ability to restart fires on demand. Similar evidence appears at sites in Europe associated with Homo heidelbergensis, the common ancestor of both Neanderthals and modern humans. By this point in the archaeological record, the relationship between humans and fire had shifted. Fire was no longer a gift from lightning. It was a technology. But how did they actually do it? And when did humans crack the specific techniques that allowed reliable fire starting from raw materials? The two oldest methods, both still teachable today, are friction fire and percussion fire. Friction fire works by rapidly rotating or scraping one piece of wood against another, generating heat through friction until a tiny ember forms in the wood dust. Percussion fire works by striking iron pyrite or flint against each other to produce sparks that can catch in dry tinder. Both methods sound simple in description. Both are extraordinarily difficult in practice. Friction fire in particular requires the right combination of wood species, the right geometry, the right speed and pressure, and perfectly dry materials. A slight change in humidity can make the difference between success and failure. Early humans would have needed to learn, through trial and error across generations, exactly which materials worked and which didn't, which combinations produced reliable embers and which produced nothing but blisters and frustration. That accumulated knowledge, passed from person to person over thousands of years, was itself one of the most valuable things any human community possessed. Now let's pause here, because this is where the story of fire making stops being a story about survival and starts being a story about us. In 1999, anthropologist Richard Wrangham at Harvard University published what became one of the most influential hypotheses in the study of human evolution. His argument, later expanded in his 2009 book Catching Fire, was bold and specific. Cooking, made possible by fire, is not just a dietary habit. It is the reason we are human. Raw food requires enormous energy to digest. The human digestive system, compared to other great apes, is dramatically shorter and less powerful. Our stomachs are smaller. Our intestines are shorter. Our jaw muscles are weaker. We are physiologically terrible at processing raw food. But cooked food is pre-digested by heat. The proteins are denatured, the starches are broken down, the calories are more accessible. Wrangham calculated that cooking effectively doubles the caloric yield of many foods, and those extra calories went somewhere specific. They went to the brain. The human brain consumes roughly 20% of your total caloric intake while comprising only 2% of your body weight. It is the most metabolically expensive organ in biology, and it got bigger, significantly and rapidly bigger, right around the time that evidence for regular fire use begins appearing in the fossil record. Wrangham argues this is not a coincidence. Fire didn't just warm us, it built us. The brain you are using right now to process this sentence may be, in the most literal sense, a product of cooking. But here's what's fascinating. The effects of fire on human society went far beyond nutrition and brain development, because fire does something no other tool does. It extends the day. Before fire, the useful hours of any day ended at sunset. When darkness came, early humans did what every other primate did. They found a safe spot and stayed still. Moving at night meant becoming food. The predators that hunted them, the large cats and hyenas that dominated the African night, could see in darkness that was nearly total. Fire broke that equation. A campfire creates a circle of safety roughly 30 feet in diameter. Inside that circle, large predators will not enter. Outside that circle, the old rules still apply. But inside, for the first time in the history of our lineage, the night was survivable, livable, usable. Fire gave early humans 2 to 4 extra hours every single day, and over thousands of generations, those extra hours changed everything. They are the hours in which stories were told, in which social bonds were formed and maintained, in which the earliest forms of culture, language, religion, and art were born around a flame that someone had worked very hard to keep alive. The campfire was not just a heat source, it was the original social technology. And the moment humans learned to make it themselves, rather than pray for lightning to deliver it, everything accelerated. A group that could start fire anywhere, in any weather, using only what they could carry, was a group that could survive anywhere, could move anywhere, could colonize any environment cold enough to require warmth, dark enough to require light, dangerous enough to require protection. The ability to make fire on demand is one of the most plausible explanations for why Homo sapiens spread across the globe so rapidly after emerging from Africa roughly 70,000 years ago. We didn't just carry fire, we carried the knowledge of how to make it. And that knowledge, encoded not in our DNA but in our minds and passed from hand to hand across uncountable generations, was the original human superpower. There is a moment, somewhere between 1 million and 400,000 years ago, when a human being sat down with 2 pieces of wood or 2 stones, and through patience and intelligence and the accumulated trial and error of their ancestors, produced a spark, and held it and fed it and watched it grow. We do not know that person's name. We do not know what they looked like or what language they spoke or whether they understood what they had done. But they had just done something that no creature in 4 billion years of life on this planet had ever done before. They had made fire from nothing, and in doing so, they had changed the world permanently and irrevocably for every human being who would ever live after them, including you, sitting here warm, fed, alive in the long, unbroken light of everything they started.